Welcome to my presentation on the culture of standardized testing and teenage mental health. My name is Jada Sears. Here's a little background on what we are going to be talking about today. I will first go over my research question, what it means, what I am looking for, and why I feel the topic is important. Then I will explain my research methods. After explaining how I found my information, I will discuss what I learned from the research and what all of the different sources mean. Using what I learned from the research, I will summarize my literature. Through this research, I wanted to learn how the developing standardized testing culture in the United States affects the mental health of high school students. I thought it was important to study this because education is so incredibly important in our society. And if there was something in education that were detrimental to the health of the students it's for, then it should be highlighted. Research on this topic had to be extensive in order to find out about testing and high school students' responses to testing specifically. To complete this project, I examined different research on current adolescent health and stressors. I also examined the way standardized testing and the culture surrounding it affects high school students today. In order for this research to be truly holistic, as medical anthropology intends, I examined biological, cultural, and environmental factors that are a part of standardized testing and high school students' daily mental health. For example, looking at the type of environment standardized testing produces for a student in school. I researched what the standardized testing culture looks like and how it can be separated from the other aspects of U.S. high school student education. This is important in research in order to rule out any confounding variables. I also researched what the average high school student's mental health looks like today. This is important because it ensures that there actually is a problem. If there is not actually a mental health problem of students today, then there is obviously no detrimental effect that can be linked to standardized testing. And if there is a problem, I wanted to know what this problem looks like. What is the biological response to this problem? What does the environment think of this problem? I used databases and peer-reviewed journals, for example, ProQuest and the American Journal of Psychiatry. I also researched through the government websites to find the political background of standardized testing. The American Psychology Association and the National Alliance on Mental Illness provided reliable information on trends in mental health for adolescents. What is standardized testing, and what does it look like in U.S. high schools? A standardized test is one that is often timed and given across a large group of students. It may be national or just county-wide. The test is focused on a set of specific skills or subject matter. Standardized testing includes AP exams, high school exit exams, SAT, ACT, IB exams, and county or school-wide diagnostic exams. They can be administered once a year, twice a year, or simply just before college. For most examinations, like IB exams and AP exams, or high school end-of-course exams, preparation is a year-long event. Courses are tailored specifically to provide students with the information they need for that course-specific test. In some cases, students are expected to learn a plethora of information over the course of the school year and regurgitate all at the end of the year. With county and statewide diagnostic tests, students are expected to take a diagnostic test at the beginning of the year, and depending on how well they did on the diagnostic test, students may be given multiple smaller tests in preparation for the final exam. Examining this question in research literature allows for us to understand what the culture of standardized testing really is. Not only are students constantly taking these tests, but a study found that they negatively perceive the constant drilling and pressure surrounding these tests. Student perceptions are very important because they can give insight to how students deal with certain things, as well as how they feel towards certain things, and in this case, standardized testing. This is a diagram from the National Education Association on an annual poll they conducted with public school students' parents. The poll found that 67% of public school parents believe there is too much emphasis on testing. This means that more than half of the parents polled believe that their students are having to focus on standardized testing too much. This is important because, as the last slide mentioned, students' and parents' perceptions are great indicators of how something is affecting a student's life. The poll also found that only 14% of parents believe that standardized testing is even effective. It is interesting that parents feel this way, and researchers actually found out whether or not testing is effective. The Education Policy Analysis Archives explained that students weren't actually performing better with the increased pressure to succeed from standardized testing. They found that testing was largely just producing more pressure in students' lives. The final part of this image says that 66% of parents oppose using test scores to evaluate teacher performance. Test scores being used to evaluate teacher performance is an example of how testing truly became a culture, and we see that parents do not agree with it. Students respond to standardized testing culture in a number of ways. Students reported feeling depressed, angry, like a disappointment, anxious, fearful, and even helpless after not doing very well on a standardized test. Because of the impact testing has on a student's future, preparation and even the aftermath of a test can be a big factor in a teenager's life at school and at home. Cross-sectional research found that adolescents' average sleep durations declined significantly from 1991 to 2012. Many adolescents are not getting the adequate amount of sleep per night. The disparity is even larger once we compare adolescents across different socioeconomic backgrounds. Overall, there is a growing problem with teenagers getting enough sleep at night, and sleep is incredibly important to the mental health and physical functioning of adolescents. Of course, sleep can be affected by a number of factors, but a study from the American Psychology Association found that school was the major stressor expressed by high school students, which brings us to the discussion of stress levels. The same study found that in the United States, teenagers were found to have high stress levels similarly to American adults. This is important because it highlights two things. The first being an overall stress culture in the United States, and the second being the connection between school, which is the major stressor for high school students, and high stress levels. Some students have developed testing anxiety, a type of performance anxiety in which a student can have difficulty concentrating, negative thoughts, feelings of danger or helplessness, and even a panic attack can occur. One of the biggest responses to the high-stakes testing culture has been the prevalence of study drugs. Prescription drugs are more commonly being used for non-medical purposes, such as getting a high score on a standardized exam. Many students take medication like Adderall to intensely concentrate on studying for an exam or even to use during an exam. A journal on child and adolescent mental health found that youth who felt more connected in school were less likely to have suicidal thoughts and tendencies. Mindfulness programs have been developed in some schools to highlight how students can combat modern-day stressors, especially those from school. These mindfulness programs are usually collective, very inclusive, and can consist of either courses, meetings, or just campaigns around school. A journal on child and adolescent mental health discussed how mindfulness programs can decrease things like anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues among adolescents. Other research found that how students perceive their success on high-stakes testing impacts how they make social connections and their further schooling. Perceptions regarding their testing outcome can impact a student's self-esteem and can be detrimental to the overall mental health of the student. The National Alliance on Mental Health launched an initiative to overcome students feeling like they are alone in struggles of helplessness, anxiety, fear, and low self-esteem. The OK to Talk movement encourages students to talk about their experiences and that it's okay to reach out to others. This initiative is just one example of programs to combat the negative effects school stressors can have on students. Mental health can be directly impacted by standardized testing. Students feel anxiety, high stress levels, and feelings of fear or hopelessness as a result of standardized testing sometimes. And the effects are extensive. We know that health can be examined holistically and that mental health can have physical impacts. We also know that an individual's mental health can impact and be impacted by their surrounding environment. Many of the research is based on school as a stressor and standardized testing as a major school stressor. Direct studies should be done so all confounding variables are ruled out. Thank you all for listening.